We really have to do the work to say, hold on, is it really true that other countries can't make medicines and vaccines? Or is this about really rich companies getting even richer right now? And I think then the truth will start to emerge. 3 decades ago, we got an agreement under the World Trade Organization called TRIPS. The TRIPS agreement stands for the Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Right, and it governs all things intellectual property related. Back when the World Trade Organization actually decided to have a TRIPS agreement, we were in the midst of a big effort to reorganize our economy, domestically in the US and globally. And as part of that, the pharmaceutical lobbies really did a lot of work to make sure that the TRIPS agreement became what it was. And not surprisingly, Pfizer led that effort. And today, nearly 40 years later, we are seeing the results of that system. Most of the world is not getting access to the vaccine. For low-income countries, less than 2% of people are vaccinated. So we're living in a time of great inequality. Governments of wealthy countries are hoarding vaccine supply that exists. So that is the first problem. And then secondly, the power to decide who makes the vaccine and other medical products, who distributes it, and ultimately who gets it, that power lies in the hands of just a few companies. And they get their power from their intellectual property right.
The pharmaceutical industry says that vaccines are complicated and therefore nobody can make them except us. But what we're saying is actually what's complicated about vaccines is that their monopolies are complicated. There are like two keys that you have to unlock in order to gain access to vaccine production, if we wanted to make the Pfizer vaccine here, for instance. And one of those keys is to repeal and temporarily suspend the TRIPS agreement at the World Trade Organization. That would suspend a whole complicated, dense, and arduous layer of pharmaceutical monopolies, which would simply provide people the legal permission to make these vaccines. At that point, they need another kind of monopoly to be overcome, which is to know how to do so, which is the technology, the manual, a guide to making a vaccine, which, of course, the companies can share, but at this moment prefer to keep locked up in a safe deposit box because in the short run, that earns them far more money.
Last October 2020, which was about 6 months into the pandemic, South Africa, India, and many, many other countries around the world joined forces to ask for a waiver of the TRIPS agreement in the context of intellectual property. You hear a lot in wealthy countries, oh, well, waiving IP wouldn't solve anything. And I think we really have to pause in this moment and think, why do we think that? The governments of South Africa, India, and 100 countries are saying this is the path forward. I think it raises important questions about who we listen to. Who are we getting our information from? And why are we not listening to countries that have already been through so much in this pandemic, who have been through this time and time again with the HIV pandemic, other pandemics? They have learned lessons. They know what their countries need, and they are asking for it. And I believe very firmly, after working on the ground for 20 years on this issue, I believe they are right. If we waive IP, we can get more manufacturers going, and we can make sure every country in the world has a shot at vaccinating their population.
I lived through April and May here in India, which I think honestly were the worst 2 months that I have ever lived on Earth. I can honestly say that I don't wish for anyone anywhere else to go through what we went through at that time, with literally deaths in the range of 5,000 a day on average. I think that that's the risk that faces now about half of humanity. That is the fate that hangs over their heads at this very moment.
These problems can feel really big. If most of the world is not getting the vaccine, how can we, especially those who have already been vaccinated, what can we do to help? And I think it's really simple. Right now, governments have the ability to change the course of history. Governments can do something unprecedented by compelling manufacturers everywhere to work together. It is going to take a historic level of global cooperation. It is going to take every person lifting their voice and telling their government that they want to see change.